Hello everyone, welcome back. My name is Adam. Welcome to a closer look at the Queen studio albums, and today we're going to be taking a look at Queen 2, released in March 1974. So this album is over 50 years old, and that astounds me. It's my favorite Queen album, and I think it's such a genius album, and I think it's very overlooked in the world of music. And obviously hardcore Queen fans probably favorite this album as well. But I just think the whole approach to this album was genius and not really repeated again in their career. It's got so many good tracks. Now, this isn't going to be a review of the album in terms of we're going to go song by song and talk about all that. No. I've got this album across many different formats, and I've listened to each one in turn, both side 1 and side 2, and I'm going to be comparing what the differences are, not only in the master, because this has been remastered 4 times from the original release, so they're all very different in terms of their sound fidelity, and of course across the different formats there's a massive difference as well. You know, the cassette tape is very limiting compared to a CD. A lot of people favor a vinyl, but then the SACD has the ability to reproduce the studio master very 100% very nicely. So which one actually sounds like, which one's my preferred way to listen to it? 2011 Island Records, which is the most common and most recent remaster. Bob Ludwig did all the Queen catalogue back in 2011, and they were re-released by Island Records. They're the ones that you listen to on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon Music, and they're the ones that most people, if you have this album, probably have in your collection. My personal opinion and preference on those is that they are mastered in a way that is expected the listener almost to be wearing earphones in a very noisy environment. So they are all mastered very hot, very high, crushing the album dynamics within the stereo field, creating yes, you can hear everything clearly, but it's not the original intention of what the album was meant to be back in 1974 from the band who originally, mixed it with Mike Stone and sort of did the mastering themselves. So it's not my preferred way to listen to it. And if you have the 2015 reprint of all the Queen Studio Collection vinyls, it's the 2011 master that is reproduced on those. Now, I do have digital versions of those, and I have listened to it, and it's just confirmed, what I've always thought, is that it's just mastered in a way that just crushes the album dynamics, makes everything way too loud, and it's kind of the trend of these recent remasters from a lot of bands, where they know people will most likely be listening to the album with headphones outside, maybe in a noisy environment, and so it's mastered to kind of compensate for all that, and it just crushes the total atmosphere of the album, I feel, and it changes how you listen to not only each of the instruments individually, but also the vocals, both backing and single front vocals. So that's the one I won't be talking about. The ones I will be talking about, though, are the original vinyl. This is the original 1974 pressing that came out in March from EMI on vinyl. This is the first pressing edition of the album, so this will represent the vinyl that I have and that I listen to. In October 1991, there was a remaster done for Hollywood Records by Eddie Schreier. I don't have that version available, but what I do have, and it's very similar to that, is the October 1991 Digital Master Series by Kevin Metcalf. I have that on cassette tape. They were also available on CD, but these are basically what the Hollywood Records were. They were mastered by somebody else, but they were mastered in a very similar way. And the first time as well, I believe that well, I don't know if it's called the Digital Master Series, because they have been available on CD in 1986, but I think this was just a remaster of the album from that original, and it was the original master that went onto CD in 1986, so no point in really listening to that one. Then in 1998, I believe it was November, Peter Mew went and remastered a lot of the albums. This one in particular on CD was released in Japan in 2001. So this has a different sound to the Digital Master Series and the original release. And this is basically a little mini LP replica on CD. It's pretty cute, and I will look at the artwork for all of these albums as well. But this one was done in 1998 by Peter Mew, but not released until 2001. And it was this same master that was the basis for the SACD release that was released in 2008, I believe it was, which I also have. It was using the Peter Mew master from 1998. So this one is the highest quality out of them all, basically because it's mastered at 96 kilohertz, 24 bits. It has literally a 1-for-1 reproduction of the studio master, what is available on here. So you really do hear all the instruments, all the vocals, and all the flaws and the limitations of the recording, because it is from 1974, but also, and we'll talk about it in a second, what the album was in itself. So yeah, 1998, that's basically came out in 2008, but this was based off the 2001 or 1998 remaster. And then of course in March 2011 you've got the Bob Ludwig remaster. In fact, this was the case for the Island Records CD set. It's the 2 CD set that I have, but I didn't like the Island Records one, so I took that CD out, put the SACD in here, but I have kept the second CD as well. So I'm kind of cannibalizing the CD for the SACD version. And do you know what? I don't even know what happened to that original Islands record version. I do have it backed up on the PC, but the actual disc, I don't know what's happened to it. I did have also the Digital Master Series on CD as well, but over the years, either I've gotten rid of them or I can't find them. And prior to that, I did have the original 1986 CD version as well. But when I got the Digital Master Series, I got rid of all those original ones. So kind of wish I'd kept everything, because then I'd have literally a complete works. But in all honesty, this album has been remastered or mastered 5 different times, and I have a version of each, so I feel like I've got a good array. So, but before we get to which one is the best sounding or which one is the most pleasant to listen to, first off, I do want to talk about the album in itself, because there is a lot to talk about in this album. It is, I feel, Queen's best work, not only for what music is on here, and it's really an underdog of an album in the Queen catalogue, but also the actual production of the release itself, like the album cover and the way it was designed, I think is genius and hasn't really been replicated in the Queen catalogue ever since this one. So looking at the front cover, obviously you've got the Queen members here: Freddie Mercury, Brian May, Roger Taylor, John Deacon, with the album title Queen 2, which obviously is the successor to their first studio album, Queen, which was re-released recently called Queen 1. So hopefully, maybe we might even get a reissue of this one in a similar fashion to that, because there are a lot of songs and a lot of unheard takes that stem from the recording sessions which took place between August 1973 and February 1974, which have yet to be released officially. And I think most Queen fans are just waiting for that big box set of Queen 2 to come out, and when it does, I will be all over it, because that is this is my favorite album, and to hear the complete sessions, from this era will be just like magic, But the front cover, as you can see, they're all dressed in black. They've got a spotlight on over them, so it's casting a very shadowy look to them, and the background is completely black as well. So it's almost a very kind of foreboding, sort of menacing cover, but at the same time, it's not only professionally lit, but it does showcase them in a professional manner. Mike Stone did the artwork for this. He took the picture. Not Mike Stone. Mick Rock, sorry, did the front cover of this and took the picture. Mike Stone was the engineer who worked on the album. So he's the one who mastered the album at the end of the day. But Mick Rock, sorry, is the one that took this. And Freddie's particular pose was inspired by Marlene Dietrich's sort of still image from Shanghai Express film. And it's perfectly replicated here. Now, when we look at the back, it's just a classic black. The Freddie created emblem logo with all their horoscopes with the Q, which basically was made for the first Queen album, and nothing else. It's completely black. So when you open up the album in its entirety to look at the gatefold at full, it really is black on that side. You know, very dark, very menacing. But when you flip it over, it suddenly is all white. The Queen members are now dressed in white with a white background. You can clearly see their faces. They are lit from the front, meaning you can see everything about them. Now, the genius in the juxtaposition between the black cover and the white inwards goes down also to the way the album was put together. The track listing down below here has side white and side black. Now, the album was created in a way where instead of having side A or side 1 and side B or side 2, they had a white side and they had a black side, which you literally have to flip around in order to see the juxtaposition of this. Now, the genius of this is that all the songs on side white deal with real life. You know, it deals with the relationship of a son to his father, or a love lost, or leaving home. Every song on side white has a reality to it, an emotion that everyone can connect to. Whereas we look at the side black songs, and they are all fantasy based. They are all, you know, set in a fantasy world, and only Funny How Love Is stands out as a song of, you know, that you can relate to. Whereas all the others come from Freddie's, you know, fantasy world. So the juxtaposition between side black and side white is really the beginnings of Bohemian Rhapsody, the song, because side white is the reality and side black is just the fantasy. And the album is literally caught in a landslide and puts you in that landslide because the different sides sound so different, and yet both pack a punch. I think this is a real genius work of art, because they've taken the vinyl format, which, of course, the vinyl record itself has two sides to it. You have to flip it over, you know, and they've actually given those sides a theme, you know, and a concept, and mirrored that with the album cover artwork itself. I think the artwork and the idea for this album is just genius in itself, because all the songs that are on, you know, side 1 and side 2 perfectly embody, you know, what the artwork says about it. You have side white, which is, they're all very young. They look very innocent. Freddie's kind of hiding a little bit, but this is a realistic reality picture of what Queen were back then. They were young. They had just started out, you know. They're innocent, they're pure, they're white. The light is shining on them, and it really does juxtaposition from the more professionally shot version, which is quite dark, quite foreboding, quite menacing, and it actually makes them look older. You know, they actually look younger on the inner cover, and here they look older. So this is more of this is what Queen wants to become. And on the inside, you've got, well, this is what Queen actually are right now. And I just think that's my interpretation, and I think it's just a brilliant design for the album. Now, before I get into the formats, one final thing I want to say is one of the songs, okay? I don't know how Freddie A got away with this, and for all the decades since this came out, over 50 years ago, no one has really ever mentioned it. Okay, there is one song on side black called The March of the Black Queen, which is easily my most favourite song. Now, unfortunately, because of copyright, I can't play you any of the music so you can hear the song, but I really implore you to go out and listen to The March of the Black Queen. It is really the precursor to Bohemian Rhapsody. It is really the rehearsal and the warm-up, and I think, my personal opinion, is it's a better song than Bohemian Rhapsody. It has key changes in it. It has choruses galore. And, you know, when they were recording this this album, you know, they kind of, before Queen 2 name and design of the album was brought up, they gave it a real sort of, well, over-the-top sort of name, because everything about the album was over the top. The amount of overdubs that was happening was making the tape see-through, because they'd done that many on it. But one song in particular, March of the Black Queen, the lyrics in it are actually very controversial for the time and even today. I'm not going to say the word, but I'll put a picture up here of the lyrics and see if you can spot what word is in there that really is quite shocking, because even back in 1974 that would have been slanderous. You know, that would have sort of had people go, "Ooh," but when you listen to the song, you don't actually hear it until you see the word in the lyrics, and then you hear it and you can just make it out. So this song, this lyric, has slipped by, I feel, everybody over the years. And I just, like, nobody's made a thing of it. Like, nobody cares at the end of the day, or they just don't know about it, you know. But Freddie got away with a lot of stuff back then, I feel, you know, and indulged himself a lot in this album. So, right. So, let's go through the various different formats now. So, listening to the vinyl record, I did find initially that the volume level, I guess, as it were, had, when I had it on reference level, it sounded very low. In fact, it was exactly 10 decibels too low. When I started listening to the others, including the tape, they, you know, when I had it on reference level, they seemed fine, you know. But the vinyl record seemed 10 decibels too quiet. Now, this could either be because A, it's 1974, the hardware and the mastering techniques weren't as good as they are now. The equipment used, basically, could be the reason. It's a lightweight vinyl, it's not a heavyweight gram vinyl, which adds kind of more, you know, perceived bass to a song or to an album. But I had to crank this up 10 decibels beyond the reference level in order to get a matching volume level across the board, which meant, obviously, that raises the noise floor of the album. So now, obviously, my vinyl copy is the original pressing from 1974. It's in very good condition. There's not any ticks, any scratches on it. There is a little bit of noise initially at the beginning of the album that you can hear, but it fades away soon. I don't think that was on, you know, the actual master, and it is on every album. I think it's specific to my copy, but, you know, my listening of this album was totally dependent on the quality of this album, which is in good quality. So side A had a less produced sound to it than side B. Side B just kicks ass in terms of both volume and what is possible with a stereo field that they had. It pushes it to the max, and you hear everything because it almost feels like the volume's been ramped up. The Nevermore song, which is quite a soft, subtle song, has a clarity over it that isn't matched by any other song on side white. You know, there are piano moments on side white which the piano is very lower in the mix than the Nevermore piano, which is literally higher in volume in the mix. It's very much side black was the focus, I feel, either in the mastering or, the volume was just pumped up a little bit. I'm not really sure, but side white does sound lower in volume overall, even though it does have a lot of heavy moments. Side black takes advantage of that, complete stereo field. But also, a vinyl record only has a dynamic range of something like 70 decibels. So, it's limited in what it can reproduce, out of the frequency spectrum. The high ends tend to cut off a little bit, and it can do a lot of low end stuff. But in overall, I found this quite pleasing to listen to, but very different from the other three that I came across. So, now looking at the Digital Master Series on tape. So this came out in 1993 or 1994 by Peter Mew, who digitally remastered them all, it says, at Abbey Road. He did all of the albums up until The Works. This actually has got some errors on it, especially with procession. When I listen to the vinyl and you hear the beginning guitar, as Brian's playing the different chords on the cassette tape, and it's not specific to the cassette tape because it was on the CD as well of the Digital Master Series. It's an error with the Digital Master Series where when Brian is changing keys of the guitar, you can hear almost like the finger crunch of the fingers sliding on the strings. It happens like at the end as he's just about to key change, and it's like a little crunch. It actually sounds quite nice, to be honest, but it wasn't on the original vinyl, so therefore I don't think it would have been or should have been even on this release. I think that was just an error in the mastering because it doesn't appear on any of the other versions either. But it is actually quite nice to listen to, and it gives the album a little bit of personality almost, But like the original vinyl, side 1, the white side, does sound lower than the dark side, but that I think is because of the complexity of the dark side or the black side, and the volume was increased anyway. But I really enjoyed listening to this because obviously there's a limitation on the tape of what it can produce. It doesn't really produce the lower end bass, and over time with the amount of plays this tape would have had, the high end begins to drop off. The more you play a tape, the less high end you hear. And so it did sound like there was kind of like a cloth over the speakers when you're listening to this version, the tape version of the album. But there was a song called Loser in the End where somebody slams a door shut. And this really made me jump when it came out because it was prominent in the mix. Whereas on the vinyl and all the other versions, it wasn't that prominent. It was kind of in the background, but on here, it really makes you stand up, and it made me jump because I wasn't expecting it. But it does sound different because it is on a tape format. That gives the album a completely different feel. The bass, the drums sound fuller. They on the album compared to the tape of the vinyl, the drums sound like fuller on here, whereas you can hear the limitation on the vinyl of the recording from 1974, but on here it seems to be more rounded, more warm, more full. The vocals completely are heard. Freddie is heard throughout. The background there's a good separation between background and the front vocal, but obviously the hi-hats and the cymbals, you don't hear them as prominently on this version as you do on any of the other versions, and that's down to the limitation of the tape. But it gives the album a completely different feel, and in all honesty, this was my preferred listen out of all of them. This one hit the reference mark level perfectly. Listening to it at reference level, it was the right level of volume for both sides. This was actually a very enjoyable experience. There wasn't any real tape hiss that I heard. If I'd have cranked up the volume again, I probably would have heard the tape hiss. I didn't have Dolby engaged, although I'm sure it's got a Dolby sign there, so I'm sure Dolby was used in the recording of this, but that's probably why you don't hear the highs as much. It's kind of like got that dampened feel to it. If I'd engaged the Dolby, it would have sounded a little bit more weird, I find. I don't like engaging the Dolby noise reduction on playbacks. It does sound very, weird, but this one sounded really nice to me, given the limitations of the format. Now, moving on to the Japanese release on CD. So CD has a dynamic range of about, I think, 70 or 75 decibels, and this is the mini LP version, so it's got the replica of the album perfectly, that even down to, this is so cute, even down to the inside lyrics are reprinted, and the elephant condom for the CD, which is a mirror replication of the inside on the vinyl. So it's such a cute release, this. But the mastering, like I said, was done by Peter Mew in 1998, and this sounds a lot different to both the original release and the Digital Master Series. Listening to the CD, again, reference level, sounded fine. It actually, it sounded just more clearer than the tape version. That's all. It didn't actually have a louder sound to it. Playing this one at reference level, it had the same volume level as the tape, but it just sounded more clear. The highs, you could hear the hi-hats, the cymbal clashes a lot more clearly. It also kind of made the drums sound a little bit flat. There wasn't a warmth anymore to the low-end drums or the bass kick. The vocals sounded nice. There was better separation I could hear between the background vocals and Freddie's front vocal. The sections where the sort of songs go a little bit quiet, especially between certain tracks, but also in a song when the volume is it's at a moment where it's really low and it's just about to ramp up. Obviously there's no signal degradation there, so you hear exactly what would have been, I guess, on the master. And for a CD, obviously the Japanese pressings are really good. They do sound superior over other world pressings, and this one is pleasing to listen to. Obviously, more so than the vinyl, you hear clarity without noise over the entire album, both sides, but when it gets to side black and it gets to like the March of the Black Queen, even Fairy Feller's Masterstroke, and Funny How Love Is, with that wall of sound they were creating, it sounds like it was pushed to its limits. Like everything just sounds like noise. You don't hear the clarity of things in the mix, between the separation of instruments now. It just sort of, it shows the limitations of a CD, effectively, side black does. And you don't get that on the vinyl. You hear that separation. And even on the tape, you hear, as muffled as it was, you still hear the separation of instruments on side black with March of the Black Queen. It doesn't pack a punch as much on tape as this does. When there is a punch to be, packed, this one really does hit it harder than the tape or vinyl version, given the dynamic range. But it almost just kind of a little bit hollow almost. Not as it doesn't have the phono preamp warmth, on CD. And it is missed, but that could just be a preference of mine, wanting to listen to that noise, to make it sound like it's come from the master reel, I guess, whereas it doesn't have that on here. But it is a very good sound. It is better, I feel, also than the 2011 Bob Ludwig remasters. I think this one on CD is the superior version to own. It's better than the Digital Master Series, it's a really nice one to listen to. Now, the SACD. Technically speaking, the SACD on here should be the best way to listen to this album, because it has the widest dynamic range. I think it's like 110 decibels. The frequency response, it can pick up everything that the human ear can hear. I mean, so can CD, to be honest, but it replicates the low end and the high end just as much as it replicates any other frequency in the middle. It was mastered at 96 kilohertz, 24 bits. It basically is the DSD stream direct from whatever reel-to-reel master that it comes from. You hear everything. There is a clarity between instruments, between vocals. You hear things you've not heard before on other versions. This is a really nice album to listen to. Now, when I originally listened to this, and this was before I had set the levels on my DVD player to match the input levels for the calibration, this actually was 10 decibels way too loud. You know, I was like, oh my gosh, that's actually too loud to listen to. And I had to turn down by 10 decibels. Then I realized I hadn't actually calibrated the DVD's player, you know, for the input into the amp. So when I did that, then I could listen to this at reference level, and then it sounded really nice. It sounded like the vocals, Freddie's vocal is so clear you would swear he's in the room with you. Every single instrument you hear with clarity, and it doesn't muddle like it does on the CD. There is a massive difference between the SACD version and the CD version. If you think that sounds good, this sounds outstandingly good. But it also, at the same time, sounds too good, because it also highlights the lack of the time of 1974's recording techniques, the hardware that was used. It doesn't sound as bassy as it could do. It doesn't sound like, it sounds like it could have had more weight to it, more on the kick and more bang on the drums, but they sound a little flat, you know, and it's not anything to do with the recording. The recording is absolutely fine, but it does sound like there's something missing, even though you hear everything. You know, when I compared it to the tape and I listened to the tape again, there is this deeper warmth on this version and the vinyl that is missing from this. Now, obviously, that's the analog nature of those two formats, whereas these two formats are a digital conversion to analog when it's played back. So, you know, it's coming from a digital, you know, which does have the ability to replicate the master 100%, and there's more room on an SACD for that response to be heard, but it then sounds too good. It sounds sterile. It sounds like there's something missing, and obviously, from my old ears, it's the phono preamp stage that is missing. The analog sound, as it were, is missing, and I'm sure if that was added, then it would sound great. But my personal preference, I enjoyed more, and it had a different feel to it, the cassette tape version. I'm not sure now if it's the format of tape or the fact that it was a digital master series. You know, who knows? But I really enjoyed listening to it on this format. It made me sound like I was listening to a reel-to-reel tape, which I guess in all effect I was, because tape is a reel-to-reel, you know, format. It doesn't use the same type of reel-to-reel that a master tape would. You know, it's a completely different chemically made tape, but I don't know. I just enjoyed the tape more. And it wasn't like it was full of hiss either. I didn't actually hear much hiss. Like, oh, you go up to the speaker and you can hear it a little bit, you know, between songs. But other than that, I really enjoyed that. It doesn't have the clarity of the digital counterparts, but it's a good listen to nonetheless. So there you go. That's my thoughts between the formats. I wish I really could play some of the examples, but I've seen some YouTubers, they bring up the waveforms, but it's like vinyl and tape wouldn't have a waveform until you recorded one. So I don't see the point in comparing waveforms, because yeah, the digital ones will have a waveform, but these don't, you know, and so you're creating one just to compare, and I don't get it. So and I really do wish I could play you some of the samples from each of the versions, but YouTube copyright would nuke the video in an instant, so I sadly can't do that. But I do implore you, if you can find the tape version of Queen 2, go find it, listen to it, and if it's in good condition, you might have a, you know, a pleasant time listening to it. But that's it basically. That's my closer look at Queen 2. And in the next episode, we're going to take a closer look, because it is the 50th anniversary of a little known song called Bohemian Rhapsody. So we're going to be taking a look at A Night at the Opera by Queen, and listening to all the 4 versions, which I haven't done yet. So I'm looking forward to that. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget, please subscribe, hit the bell to get notified of any more videos from this series when we take a closer look at Queen. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye.